In September, as Japanese drives from the north and south closed on Guilin, key center for southeast China and capital of Guangxi province, the city was evacuated of civilians and prepared for a last-stand defense by Chinese ground forces. Police directed streaming refugees amid fortifications constructed inside the city, pillboxes fashioned from torn-down buildings, miles of barbed wire entanglement. Some soldiers marshaled for the city's defense were the best fed, armed, and clothed that remained of that battered army. Others were exhausted or untried. Armed with all kinds of grades of equipment, much of it obsolete or in poor condition, they were going to stand against freshly supplied Jap divisions. At the railroad station, government evacuation tickets were issued. But the main problem was transportation, and holding a ticket did not guarantee a ride. The frightened homeless Chinese overflowed the one rail line that would carry their escape farther south to Luichao. Children were bloated from malnutrition. The people were strained, tired, hungry from their constant running before the advancing Japs. It was over 90 in the shade. Water was scarce, disease prevalent. The 80-mile trip took 3 to 4 days, but refugees stayed all day in steel boxcars, afraid of losing their places. They perched anywhere on any car, hopeful that eventually they would be moved out. The mass evacuation also clogged the roads. The people traveled on foot, by truck, cart, rickshaw, donkey, carrying their pathetic belongings by any means. Among this refugee flood were hundreds of fifth columnists. Great numbers of traitors worming ahead of the 60,000 Japs thrusting toward Guilin, sabotaged, spread distrust and fear, added to the handicaps of the Chinese army already beset by inadequacies of equipment and command. By sampan, they streamed down the river to Luichao. Meanwhile, in barren streets, soldiers worked on machine gun posts, slit trenches and barricades they would soon use in another of their endless delaying actions. In view of previous impotent Chinese efforts to stem the Jap advance, the 14th Air Force at Guilin prepared in mid-September to abandon and demolish another of its hard-won air bases. The installations of the main and subsidiary fields in the Guilin area were our most extensive in China. Operating against obstacles of supply, Chinese insecurity, bad weather, widely scattered bases, and against a constant, well-stocked Jap offensive, the small 14th Air Force has steadily blasted the enemy. One score alone of its remarkable achievement was sinking or damaging of over 1 million tons of Jap shipping last year. Now this big base at Guilin had to be destroyed and its personnel flown south to keep unbroken the continuity of service from rear bases. The departure of General Stilwell, who had conferred with American and Chinese officers, was the signal to blow the base and get out. 14th and ATC transports evacuated most personnel and vital equipment that day. Meanwhile, coolies dug pits to bury bombs. Some were to be exploded at once, others not until Jap threat was imminent, and then to prevent Jap use of any facility. These 1,000-pounders were buried at all strategic places in the city as well as on the airstrips. For example, 21 were put on one fighter strip. Demolition crews were the only United States personnel that had been left at the fields. Demolition started on the strips September 15th. At midnight, installations and hostels were burned, 550 buildings in all. Drums of gasoline were placed in each building, and demolition crews set them ablaze with incendiary bullets fired from rifles. The fire raced through the flimsy structures, at times exploding ammunition left carelessly behind. At the same time, demolition bombs hammered the glowing valley. By dawn, destruction of the $70 million base was practically completed, to keep any of it from falling into Jap hands. The scorched earth policy was carried out by the Chinese also. Lacking engines to haul some 200 railroad cars, they were destroyed on sidings between the field and the town. Bridges were demolished. This railroad span was about 10 miles from Guilin. Air views September 18th showed the ring of bases thoroughly burned and blasted. Only one fighter strip was left intact, and it presumably was still in operation in mid-October. The 14th, flying from southern bases at Nanning, Chikiang, and Luichao, continued to slash at the four-pronged drive that currently has clamped Guilin. But part of that drive has veered toward Luichao itself, and it seemed that soon the three bases in southeast China would be denied the 14th too, thus seriously handicapping it and maintaining its war on Jap shipping. Near the Lechia-Chen field at Guilin, the largest wood truss bridge in China was demolished. A taxiway across it led from the field to a large cave, which was to have been used as a repair hangar, capable of housing 8 to 10 C-47s. Guilin itself had been put to the torch. This second large-scale burning of a city since the beginning of the Sino-Japanese War was surpassed only by the conflagration at Changsha in 1938. This wholesale flame gutting was part of the city's defense to open a field of fire on the enemy. From houses on the edge of town to the center of the business and shopping district, nothing that needed to be burned was spared. Only the aged, too weak or weary to move, remained. The main street held only stragglers. Shops not looted or burned were closed. And the same bridge, which a few days before was weighted with fleeing multitudes, now felt the last pitiful trickle of evacuees. A tired old woman, all interest in living gone, waited, like the guard at the bridge's entrance, for the Japs to come. Barricades like these across the main road leading into Guilin from the north netted the city. Chinese engineers planted mines made in China. The Chinese were about ready to put up another fight. And their fortification work was aided by the continuous arrival of American lease-lend equipment and supplies. The Chinese needed desperately everything they could muster, every ounce we could spare. Total Jap ground strength in central China is an estimated 450,000, and aircraft strength has been materially increased. By mid-October, though Guilin still held, it appeared the Japs might accomplish their objectives: to drive south to French Indochina and complete a land supply line from north to south China, and to deny the 14th its southeastern air bases. But despite setbacks, the 14th Air Force continued to pound all fronts and supply points in an effort to halt the Jap offensive toward Guilin. At Ho Chi Shi, Mustang-escorted B-25s bombed the target squarely from 2,000 feet. No interception was met and all planes returned safely. Tactically, the 14th has always excelled any Jap air opposition, although often outnumbered and always outgassed. But the 14th is much better supplied now than last spring, and regardless of its diminishing bases, it can still cost the Japs a punishing price in men, equipment, and aircraft as their supply lines lengthen. Kunming-based liberators of the 14th bombed Hengyang, even while Guilin was being evacuated and demolished. 21 planes scored 100% hits with 100-pound demolition bombs on enemy positions here. There was no ack-ack or interception, and all planes returned safely. This strike typified the widespread effort to stop feeder lines from reaching invading forces to the south. Changsha, one of the strongest centers of supply for the Guilin advance, was hit heavily with 100-pound incendiaries. A large Jap motor pool and barracks in the heart of the city was smashed. The general Chinese situation was admittedly serious, but the 14th Air Force, cooperating with the Naval Task Force on October 16th, sank 2 warships off Formosa and shipping that sought refuge at Hong Kong. Despite difficulties, the 14th Air Force is still an aggressive, formidable fighting unit.